Everyone in town avoided Emil, the graveyard's pale, whisper-voiced caretaker with eyes that never quite looked at you. No one spoke about him, and no one asked questions, but Darren didn't have a choice. He was broke, desperate, and when the offer came to work nights at the old cemetery, he took it. Emil gave him one rule: stay off the grass near Section D. Darren laughed. Emil didn't. That was the first red flag. What Darren would encounter that night will haunt you. The wind had a way of slipping through the gaps in the cemetery gate, moaning low like something half alive. Darren stood at the edge of the rusted entrance, backpack slung over his shoulder, the tips of his boots just brushing the gravel path. It was nearly sunset, and the last bit of orange light clung to the tops of the trees like it didn't want to let go. This was his first night on the job. Technically, it wasn't supposed to be a night job, but overtime was offered, and Darren needed the money. Rent had gone up, his roommate had bailed, and his car had decided it no longer wanted to be a functioning piece of machinery 2 weeks earlier. So here he was, agreeing to watch over a place that even the locals didn't like to mention after dark. Just walk the path. The groundskeeper, a wiry man named Emil, had told him earlier that day. Stay off the grass if you can, especially near the older section. They're touchy about that. Darren had laughed, thinking it was just a weird old man trying to spook the new guy. Emil didn't laugh back. Seriously, there's a reason the path curves around Section D. Just follow the curve. Now, standing there in the growing dark, Darren realized Emil wasn't just superstitious, he was afraid. His eyes had darted away when Darren asked what exactly was in Section D, and all he'd muttered was, "Old ground, messed up graves, let 'em be." Darren clicked on his flashlight and stepped in. The cemetery was bigger than it looked from the road. Most of the headstones were faded, worn down by years of rain and neglect. Names were barely readable on some. Others had been reclaimed by ivy, stones swallowed by green. It smelled like wet leaves and time-old earth, decay, and the faint trace of something sweet that didn't belong. He stuck to the gravel path like Emil said. It wound between rows of graves, many from the early 1902nd. A few candles flickered in jars beside newer plots. Plastic flowers rustled in the breeze. As the sky dimmed, the flashlight became more essential. His phone had no signal, of course. Emil had warned him about that too. You get turned around. Don't bother trying to call. The trees mess with reception. Around 8:45 p.m., Darren reached the curve. Section D lay ahead, to the left, through a narrow gate that was half-hinged and crooked. The path itself veered sharply right, snaking around a dense copse of old oaks. He paused. The air felt thicker here, like walking into a room with no windows. He aimed the flashlight through the broken gate. The grass beyond it looked wrong, uneven, like it had been stirred. It wasn't like he was planning to go off the path, but something moved. Just a flicker, a shadow between two stones, fast and low to the ground. Darren stopped breathing for a second, then he stepped closer, scanning the area. Nothing. He told himself it was probably an animal, a raccoon, maybe a fox, something nocturnal, digging through flower pots or trash bins nearby. He turned to walk the path, but his boot slipped slightly on the gravel and, out of reflex, he stepped left just barely onto the edge of Section D. His foot landed directly on the mound of a grave. The earth gave just slightly under his weight. The name on the headstone was too faded to read. He stepped back quickly, heart pounding. It was stupid. Just a step. Nothing happened. No lightning strike. No ghostly scream. He even chuckled a little to himself. But then he noticed something strange. The flashlight, which had been steady all night, flickered once. He tapped it. It steadied. When he turned around to continue the patrol, something made him stop again. A sound. Soft, like whispering. He spun the beam of light back towards Section D. The grass was unmoving. The trees stood silent. No shadows darted now. But something was different. One of the headstones had shifted. He was sure of it. It had been leaning slightly left before. Now it stood straight. He didn't go back to check. He told himself he must have imagined it. The rest of his patrol was uneventful. He circled the perimeter, checked the locks on the maintenance shed, and returned to the small security booth at the cemetery entrance around 11 p.m. By midnight, he was nodding off in the booth chair. He dreamed of dirt under his nails and the feeling of sinking, of something whispering from beneath the floorboards. He woke up sweating at 12:17 a.m. There was a knock on the booth window. He sat up fast, heart hammering. Nothing outside. The path was empty. The motion sensor light hadn't even turned on. Then came the second knock, this time from the back wall of the booth. Darren stood slowly, gripping the flashlight, breath shallow. He moved to the back door, opened it cautiously, and stepped out. No one there. But on the ground, pressed into the dirt just outside the booth, were footprints, bare feet, too long, with toes that looked almost wrong, twisted, as if something had tried to copy the shape of human feet but hadn't quite understood how. He didn't sleep for the rest of the night. When Emil returned at sunrise, Darren told him everything, or tried to. He started with the whisper, the flashlight flicker, and the footprints. Emil listened silently, then asked just one question. "You didn't step on the grass in Section D, did you?" Darren hesitated. "Only for a second," he said. "By accident." Emil just shook his head. "Then it knows you now." Darren didn't sleep that day. Even with the curtains pulled shut, even with his phone off and a blanket over his head, something about the air in his apartment felt wrong, too still, too alert. By 5 p.m., he was back at the cemetery, even though he wasn't scheduled. Emil was in the shed sharpening rusted shears. "I need to see it," Darren said. Emil didn't look up. "It's not just a grave anymore. I need to see it." This time, Emil met his eyes. "You shouldn't. It remembers everyone who walks on it." Darren turned and walked towards Section D. The gate was open again, waiting. The trees leaned in slightly, unnaturally. The grass had grown longer in just one day. It shimmered when the light hit it, not from dew, from movement. Darren stepped inside. The grave looked different now, soil damp, disturbed. Something was etched into the dirt, a symbol, a circle of lines that pulsed like veins. He crouched, reached forward. The dirt was warm. A vibration buzzed up his fingertips, a low hum, like breathing. He stood fast and backed away straight into another grave mound behind him. His ankle twisted. He fell. When he looked up, the headstones had changed. The trees, too. They weren't his trees anymore. Someone was standing in the distance. He blinked and was closer. He didn't remember getting home, but when he woke on the floor, there was dirt in his mouth. His sheets were soaked with cold sweat. His boots were missing. The mirror in the bathroom was fogged, and written in the grime, "You stepped in." He left his apartment that night. He tried calling Emil again. No answer. The next morning, Darren didn't show up to work. His apartment was empty. His phone was on the kitchen counter. Dirt led from the bed to the front door. His boots were found on his porch, neatly placed, laces tied. 2 days later, a hiker spotted a body at the edge of the woods behind the cemetery. At least they thought it was a body. It was Darren's face, staring upward from the soil, eyes wide open, mouth packed with dirt. But when they tried to dig, the ground caved in unnaturally fast, like it had swallowed him back. The body was never recovered. A week later, a groundskeeper opened the cemetery shed and found something new etched into the back wall. He stepped in, and now he can't step out. They say Section D doesn't exist anymore. The cemetery map skips from C to E. The gate was removed. The grass was replaced with gravel, but no one walks there. Because if you stand too long in that space, just after midnight, you'll hear a knock from underneath you. And sometimes, if you're wearing boots, you'll feel someone untie them